Black girl boarded the wrong bus to a white school. Next day, a private helicopter came for her. What happens when an 11-year-old girl boards the wrong bus and ends up at the gates of an elite white school? They called the police. What happened next turned her name into a symbol and shook the entire country. 7 in the morning in Brooklyn is not a beginning. It's a punch to the ribs from a city that never asks if you're ready. The streets already stink of last night's trash. Some neighbors cussing out someone 2 floors down over something stupid like a stolen mop bucket. And there's always that one dog barking like the rent's due and nobody told him. It's not a wake-up, it's a warning shot. And today, for Aaliyah James, it was supposed to be the start of something big. She stood in the kitchen, 10 years old going on 30, holding a wooden spoon over a bubbling pot of oatmeal like she was defusing a bomb instead of fixing breakfast. Her mother, Elise, had left for her nursing shift an hour ago after straightening her daughter's collar, kissing her forehead, and saying the same thing she said before every hard day. Doesn't matter how many bullets life loads into the chamber, baby. Just walk like you already dodged them all. That stuck with Aaliyah. Always did. Even now, heart pounding harder than the MetroCard machine when it's out of service, she stood there pretending like everything was fine. But inside was a storm. See, today wasn't just any first day. It was her first day at James Madison Academy, one of those schools where the gym looked like a cathedral, the lunch menu came with vegan options, and every hallway smelled like brand new money and over-polished futures. This wasn't her zone school. This was the kind of place kids from her block didn't get into, not without a miracle or a scholarship. She had earned the latter. Her test scores had shocked some folks. The interview committee had smiled politely and said, "We believe in equity." But behind those nods, Aaliyah could read the real message. You're not supposed to be here, but we'll make a space. Just one. When she got the acceptance letter, her mom cried. Her grandma shouted hallelujah so loud, the upstairs tenant knocked to ask if someone died. And Aaliyah? She just stared at her name on the letterhead, like it wasn't even hers. Now here she was, standing on a cracked sidewalk at 6:45 a.m., wearing her best hand-me-down jacket, clutching a piece of paper with the school address like it was a map to buried treasure. Her backpack was packed tight, notebook, pencils, calculator, lunch, and enough nerves to power a city block. A yellow school bus rolled up, not the usual rust bucket she knew, with saggy doors and a driver who called everybody kiddo. No, this one looked freshly waxed. Tires new, chrome mirrors shining like they were afraid of dirt. The driver, white, wrinkled, glasses thick as jam jars, barely glanced her way, just nodded once. She climbed in, and the silence slapped her. Every single head that turned in her direction wore a face that didn't look like hers. Straight hair, polo collars, not one set of box braids, not one afro puff, no music in earbuds, no whispered jokes in the back. The air inside that bus was tight, stiff, like everyone had been trained to breathe in sync. Aaliyah made her way to the very back. Always go to the back. It's where the invisibles sit. It's where the silence doesn't bite so hard. She tried to rationalize it for the first 10 minutes. Maybe this bus goes to multiple schools? Maybe the neighborhood's just different? By the 20-minute mark, her palms were sweating. At 40, the bus pulled into a campus so big, so white, it looked like it had been designed by someone who thought diversity was just a color palette in Photoshop. White columns, an American flag big enough to wrap a stadium, stone lions on either side of the gate, and a sign, Green Heights Academy, established 1892. That wasn't James Madison, not by a long shot. She stepped down and approached the driver. "Excuse me, I think this isn't my school. I'm supposed to be going to—" "Sit down, girl. I don't have time." That's all he said. Like she wasn't standing there trembling in a new coat that didn't quite fit. Like she wasn't holding a folded paper with the right name on it. Like she was just another problem he didn't get paid enough to care about. So she got off. Outside, the kids were stepping down from the bus with ballet-perfect posture. Their uniforms were ironed within an inch of their lives. One boy glanced at her, nudged the girl beside him, and whispered, "Who's that?" The girl didn't whisper back. She said it loud for the wind and the world to hear. "She's not from here." And that felt less like a fact and more like a sentence. Like a border wall had just dropped around her. Aaliyah walked up to the nearest adult, a security guard with a clipboard and an earpiece, and tried to explain. Her voice was small, but her eyes stayed steady. "I think I got on the wrong bus. I'm just trying to get to James Madison." "Step back behind the gate," he said, voice flat, eyes cold. "But either you go now or I call the police." That was it. "No. Let me help you." "No." Let's call someone. Just a verbal shove out the door. She stood there outside the gate, holding her paper like a flag nobody saluted. Her green backpack hung from one shoulder, one shoe slightly untied. She looked around. Teslas gliding by, parents sipping lattes, kids clutching tablets. And here she was, a mistake in the middle of someone else's curated photo. 10 minutes passed. A police cruiser pulled up, fast, too fast. The officer who stepped out, young, white, sunglasses too small for his ego. He approached like the problem had already been solved. Is this her? Yes, said a woman with a clipboard. She trespassed, no record, no ID, trespassed, as if she'd vaulted a fence with a crowbar in hand, not just gotten on the wrong bus. The officer turned to her. Name? Aaliyah James. Where's your school ID? I don't have one yet. Today's my first day. So what, you from Harlem? Brooklyn, he smirked. Figures. Figures what? Figures she doesn't belong? Figures her presence here required a squad car? He gestured to the cruiser. Let's go. We'll sort it out downtown. She whispered, voice breaking at the edges. I didn't do anything wrong, but that didn't matter. Not here, because here the system wasn't built to hear her. And then, like a door slamming open in a quiet room, another voice cut through. You've got to be kidding me. From a sleek black SUV that had just pulled up, a woman stepped out. Black, tall, jacket crisp, purse expensive, phone in hand, camera already rolling. You're detaining an 11-year-old girl for showing up at the wrong school? The cop blinked. Ma'am, please step back. Number, I'm documenting, and I'm calling my editor. This is going on record. And just like that, the energy shifted. Staff came out, public relations coordinator, assistant principal, a nervous custodian with a mop pretending not to listen. Suddenly, everyone wanted to de-escalate, but Aaliyah, she stood still, watching, realizing. She did everything right, showed up early, followed the rules, had her address in writing, and yet here she was, the problem, not the person. That's when she heard it, a low hum in the distance, growing louder, deeper. Above them, slicing across the blue sky like a question with no answer, something enormous was descending. Dark, metallic, impossible. A helicopter. Private, sleek, and it was coming straight for her. They thought she would fold. They thought they could erase her the way folks scrape gum off the sole of a shoe. Quick, dismissive, with just enough pressure to forget it ever stuck. No questions, no noise, no consequences. But things didn't follow the script. 17 minutes after the police officer's hand gripped her arm just below the shoulder, a video hit TikTok. It wasn't polished, it wasn't even steady, but it was enough. Enough to show a small black girl standing outside a school she never meant to enter. Eyes wide, voice trembling, trying to explain the simplest thing. I just got on the wrong bus. The caption read, a child should never be scared for showing up to learn. That message, raw and direct, landed like a stone in a still pond. By minute 22, it hit Instagram. By minute 40, CNN's push notification lit up phones nationwide. Black student removed from private school by police after boarding wrong bus. Eyewitnesses alleged discriminatory treatment. But Aaliyah James didn't know any of this, because while the hashtags exploded and influencers started typing, she was sitting in a dim, windowless room with peeling linoleum and fluorescent lights that buzzed like they were mad too. In front of her, a woman in tortoiseshell glasses, stiff blazer, and an expression that said she hadn't smiled at a child in 15 years. Her voice dripped with the kind of cold civility that made you feel like dirt politely. Do you understand that you've entered a secure private institution? Aaliyah's voice was soft but steady. I didn't know. I just got on the wrong bus. We have protocols. We can't have just anyone showing up on campus. The pause between anyone and showing up was deliberate. A tiny, sharp pause, the kind that cuts deeper than a scream. I'm not anyone, Aaliyah said, eyes still on the desk. I'm a person. And that sentence, that one simple truth, hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. A truth that didn't need embellishment. It just needed to exist. The woman blinked. Is your parent available for contact? My mom's working. She's a nurse. She's on shift. Phone number? Aaliyah shook her head. It's in my backpack. They left it outside. She didn't cry. Not out loud. But her jaw was tight. Her fists were closed so hard the skin on her knuckles looked pale. Her morning, that beautiful, hopeful morning, with oatmeal and a pressed jacket, had curdled into this. A chair with no arms. A stranger's suspicion. A question she never should have had to answer. Outside the door, voices started to rise. Rushed, frantic. Someone whispered, "Anna, already 200,000 views." Where? Everywhere. Even Charlene Simmons picked it up. See, institutions like this, they're built for privacy, not spotlight. They thrive on silence, not scrutiny. They're used to locking doors and controlling narratives. But once the internet pulls up a seat, you can't hide under polished mission statements. Inside the room, Aaliyah heard none of this. But something shifted in her chest. Just a flicker. Just enough for a breath that didn't shake. Then the door opened. The same assistant principal who'd walked her off campus was back, but her tone had shifted. Still clipped. Still formal. But something behind her eyes had changed. Something that looked a lot like fear. "You'll be moved to a secure location now," she said flatly. Secure, as if Aaliyah were the threat. No apology, no explanation, just process. They led her down a service hallway, through a back door. The sunshine outside felt surreal, like she'd crossed from one world into another. The asphalt was cracked. The parking lot was nearly empty. A dented fence creaked in the breeze. Her backpack was waiting, tossed beside a concrete bench like someone wanted to say, "Here, take your mess and go." "Sit here," the woman said. "Someone's coming for you." Someone, not your parent, not a staff member, just someone. She sat. The concrete was hot. She pulled off her jacket and sat on it. Her legs swung off the curb like they used to when she was 5, waiting for her mom outside the corner store. But this time, she wasn't a kid waiting for juice. She was a girl waiting for dignity. And so she looked up, because sometimes when the world looks down on you, the only honest place left is the sky. 8 minutes passed. Then, the air changed. First came the sound, low, steady, like thunder holding its breath. Then came the vibration, the dust, the shift in every molecule around her. A shadow grew across the school grounds. A helicopter. Sleek, black, massive, marked with a logo. A fist wrapped around a globe. Future Minds Initiative. A name that didn't need explanation for folks who knew. An organization that didn't hand out pity, but power. One that didn't talk about equality in brochures, but built ladders out of real steel. The door opened midair. Out stepped a man in a gray suit, walking like time moved for him, not the other way around. Dr. Quincy Marshall, educator, activist, architect of futures too bold for institutional gatekeepers. He scanned the lot. "Aaliyah James?" She stood. "Yes, I'm Aaliyah." He nodded. "Let's go. Time's tight." Who are you?" He smiled, not kindly, but firmly. "The man who knows a system messed with the wrong kid." Behind them, from the school's main building, came a sudden clatter. Heels on concrete, breathless indignation. The assistant principal again. "Excuse me, you can't just, this is private property." Dr. Marshall didn't turn. "You lost the right to private when you made a child public. You had a chance to say, 'Are you all right?' But you called security instead. So now, she's leaving, and she won't be back." Aaliyah climbed the stairs into the cabin. Velvet seats, cool air, windows that reached for clouds. It didn't feel like luxury. It felt like air. As the blades spun and the earth dropped away, a photographer behind the school gate lifted a camera. One shot, just one. Aaliyah, sitting tall, backpack in her lap, helicopter behind her, and the logo, that globe fist, clear on the fuselage. Someone posted the photo with a caption, "Not everyone who starts at the bottom is meant to stay there." It went viral again. Aaliyah didn't know that yet. She just stared out the window down at the school that looked smaller by the second. Not because it was far, but because it was small. Everything they tried to make her feel shrunk with the distance. Dr. Marshall turned. "Still think you just got on the wrong bus?" She looked out again, past the rooftops, toward the sky she'd claimed. "No," she said softly. "I think they got on the wrong side of history." When the helicopter door closed behind her and the rotors began their deep mechanical roar, slicing through the sky like scissors across silk, Aaliyah James finally allowed herself to breathe. Not the shallow, polite inhale you do in rooms where people don't want you, but a deep, steady breath from the gut. The kind of breath you take when the ground falls out from under you and you realize you're still standing. Or better yet, flying. It wasn't the kind of strength you show off on glossy brochures or diversity pamphlets. It was the raw kind, the kind you earn one scar at a time, the kind that doesn't come with applause, just survival. Dr. Quincy Marshall sat beside her, calm as always, tablet in hand, his silver-rimmed glasses catching the light like truth waiting to be read. He turned the screen toward her. Want to see what just broke the internet? She hesitated, then nodded. On the screen, a freeze frame from the footage. A still of her, that very moment. The officer's hand gripping her arm just beneath the shoulder. Her mouth halfway open. Not crying, not yelling. Just breathing through it, surviving it. The headline read, Brooklyn student detained at private school gates. Future minds respond swiftly. She blinked, looked closer. It was her. Her fingers. Her bag. Her face. Tired but not broken. Small but not silent. They all saw this, she asked softly. Dr. Marshall nodded. The whole country, kid. And not just the usual folks ranting on Facebook. No, I'm talking about the ones who just yesterday would have said, why don't they just stay in their neighborhoods? Funny thing is, they real quiet today. Aaliyah didn't answer. She just looked out the window, down at the shrinking world below. Green Heights Academy, so shiny from the ground, now looked like a mistake built out of bricks. Tiny, ridiculous, useless as a locked gate with no purpose. And what waited ahead? A new chapter, a whole new book. The helicopter touched down on a campus so different, it felt like stepping into a different America, the one they don't show you in insurance commercials. Trees stretched tall like they had nothing to apologize for. A lake shimmered. Walkways curved naturally. Students of every shade moved between buildings like they had somewhere worth going. Like curiosity wasn't just tolerated, it was the culture. East Bridge Academy, where intelligence wasn't measured against skin tone, where you weren't an exception, just a student. At the front desk, a woman in a navy blouse smiled without the practiced stiffness of diversity coordinators. Welcome, Aaliyah. Room 114. Breakfast at 8:30. Placement test Monday. And welcome home. Home. Not temporary placement. Not pilot program participant. Just home. She stepped into her dorm room. Bright, clean, sunlit. A folded uniform lay on the desk beside a handwritten note. You are not a mistake. You are a precedent. Future Mind Staff. That night she didn't sleep. Who could? She unpacked. She explored. She read. She wrote. She memorized the layout of the building. She stared at her reflection longer than usual, not checking her hair, but studying her presence. She wasn't scared anymore. She was focused, not because she wanted revenge, but because they'd made her take flight, and now she had no interest in coming down. The next morning, she walked into a classroom that didn't whisper about her presence. No one stared like she broke a rule by existing. No one tried to shrink her. 15 students sat around a large table. In the center, a woman in her 50s, glasses that could cut through lies, and a voice that sounded like it had seen too much but still believed in young people. Mrs. Glover, English department. This week's writing assignment, she announced, is an essay on a moment that changed your identity. Be honest, be bold, be funny if you must, but don't lie to yourself. Aaliyah picked up her pen. Paper, breathed. She didn't write about the helicopter, or the foundation, or the headlines. She wrote about the gate. She wrote about how it felt to be looked at like a typo, how adults, people paid to protect and teach, treated her like an intruder, how their words said order, but their eyes said contamination, how the officer didn't ask what happened, just asked where she was from, and assumed that explained everything. She ended with one line, they wanted me to feel out of place. I ended up feeling real. Mrs. Glover read it, sat with it, looked up, eyes glassy but sharp. You're not just a writer, Ms. James. You're spine. 3 days later, Green Heights sent a formal email to Future Minds. We regret the misunderstanding. We are committed to reviewing internal protocols. It was a classic PR shuffle, a game of chess with pawns and lawyers. The Foundation's reply, spilling coffee is a misunderstanding. What happened here was a decision. And still, a week later, as if maybe they could rewrite the past if they wore nicer suits, a delegation arrived on campus. A deputy principal, a legal consultant, and yes, Ms. Vanderbilt herself, the very woman who'd looked at Aaliyah like a stain on her marble floor. They brought flowers, a plaque, and a line rehearsed too many times. We'd like to present a certificate of resilience. Also, we're open to discussing potential reintegration. Dr. Marshall didn't even rise. He turned to Aaliyah. Your call. She stood. You called the police on a child. Her voice didn't tremble. You didn't offer water or a phone. You didn't even ask if I was okay. You treated me like I broke something, like I was something broken. She reached into her bag, pulled out a notebook. This is my essay. It's about that day. Read it. Not for damage control, for understanding, and then don't come back. Miss Vanderbilt's lips parted like she wanted to protest, but no sound came. The legal rep scribbled something on a pad that trembled in his hands. Aaliyah handed over the paper and walked out. No mic drop, no dramatic pose, just exit. Later that night, she sat by the lake, not in anger, not in vengeance, but in peace, notebook in hand, head clear. She wasn't here to prove she belonged. She was here because the system had underestimated her. And that mistake would cost them for years because now she wasn't just a student. She was the storm. A month, 30 days, that's all it took. 30 days since Aaliyah James stood on the cracked sidewalk outside Green Heights Academy with dust on her shoes, shame clinging to her like a second skin, and a crowd of grown adults deciding her worth based on which side of a gate she stood on. 30 days since someone in a crisp uniform touched her arm like it was a handle on a trash bin. Since they tried to shrink her into silence, bury her in embarrassment, then sweep her out like the janitorial mistake they assumed she was. But shame has a funny way of turning into armor when you refuse to wear it. In 30 days, her name, once mumbled at a security checkpoint like a nuisance, had become a headline, not a scandal, a statement. Aaliyah James wasn't just a student anymore. She was the voice, not of polished brochures or sponsored slogans, but of a truer America, the one with frizzed hair and cracked sidewalks, the one that isn't airbrushed for cereal commercials or equity reports, the one they don't print on tote bags. She was the voice of the America that doesn't get invited and walks in anyway. And no, she hadn't changed. Same scuffed boots, half a size too big, because growing into them was always the plan. Same hoodie, same steady eyes, same braids that her mama still twisted every Sunday with coconut oil and quiet prayers. But now if someone stared too long or said something with that sugar-coated bite of microaggression, they were the ones backing down. Because this girl, she didn't just show up, she arrived. At Eastbridge Academy, the shift was palpable. No one looked through her anymore. No one said her name like it was a typo. She was no longer the girl from that video. She was Aaliyah, a scholar, a peer, and every corridor she walked became a runway for dignity. On week 6, the foundation asked if she'd be willing to speak at the fall forum, not for cameras, not for donors, but for the room, a quiet gathering of parents, faculty, students, and community leaders. They said, "Only if you want, no pressure." She said, "I want to." So there she was, on a modest stage, no podium, no slideshow, no flashy graphics, just a girl in her favorite jeans, sneakers that squeaked slightly when she shifted her weight, and hands deep in her pockets like the truth she was about to tell might burn her palms if she held it too tightly. She spoke without a script, because this story lived too deep in her chest to need rehearsal. "I'm not a hero," she began, voice steady as the ground she'd clawed back. "I just wanted to get to school. That's it. One wrong bus, one right heart. That's how it started." Pause, breath. "I didn't come to make noise, but they handed me a megaphone when they tried to silence me." She told them what it felt like. Not the headlines, not the hashtags. The cold, the confusion, the condescension in the way adults spoke about her like she was an inconvenience instead of a child. The shame they tried to load onto her shoulders like a backpack full of bricks. But I wasn't the mistake. The mistake was thinking I'd stay quiet. When she finished, there wasn't applause. Not at first. Just a long moment where the entire room realized they were watching something rare. Not a speech, not a student, a reckoning. Then the applause came. Loud, real. The kind that says, "We hear you now." 2 days later, a letter arrived, stamped with the same silver emblem that once towered over her, like a gate she'd never passed through. Green Heights Academy. "We have revisited our internal protocols and sincerely regret the events of last month. We would be honored to invite Miss James as a distinguished youth voice at our upcoming roundtable on future inclusion." Aaliyah read it, laughed. Not cruelly, just knowingly. Future inclusion, huh? Because that's what they called it now. Inclusion. When they realized exclusion made them look bad on camera. She sat at her desk, pen in hand. No advisors, no red pens. Just her and the truth. Her response was short, director, sharper than any gate. Inclusion isn't an invitation sent after a scandal. It's a door that should have never been locked. I've found a place where I am not tolerated, but valued. And here's what's truly terrifying. I have no desire to return, not even to educate you, because you're no longer the measure I use. Respectfully, without submission, Aaliyah James. The letter leaked and spread, fast. Screenshots flooded Instagram. Educators reposted it with captions like, "Say it louder." A black teacher in Chicago blew it up and pinned it on his classroom wall. Not tolerated, Valued. That phrase hit people. It became a mantra. Meanwhile, Aaliyah kept going. Not into music, not into merch, not into interviews she didn't want. She didn't try to become an icon. She stayed what she always was, a student. Math, lit, civics. She didn't need lights to glow. Sometimes kids approached her in the hallway. Are you know, her? She nodded, always added, I am, but you're next. Because now they'd seen it. Now they knew. The system can bruise you, but it doesn't get to bury you. On a Friday afternoon in a civics class taught by a professor who knew the law but still believed in justice, a question was asked. What does justice look like to you? Aaliyah raised her hand. Justice is when you no longer have to explain why you're in the room. The class fell quiet. Even the clock seemed to pause. That night, she walked across campus with a book in one hand and the wind tugging at the hoodie draped around her shoulders. Her boots, still a little too big, slapped against the pavement in rhythm with her thoughts. Above her, a plane crossed the sky, red blinking light slicing the darkness. She didn't look up and wonder, will they let me in? She walked forward knowing, now I decide where I belong.